Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fishin, the podcast where I'm learning to suck less at Merfolk, and you are all learning from my mistakes. My name is Kody, one of the hosts of the show. The other host of the show is my good friend Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great tonight, Kody. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I'm the one that's kind of trying to learn about Merfolk here, but I did bring you on as somebody who has played Magic for a little while and played Modern quite a lot. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm one of those guys who started playing back in Revised as like a 7-year-old, 6, 7, somewhere around there. Had no idea what I was doing. I probably traded away all my dual lands and power for Leviathan because it was a 10-10 trampler, and that's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah,
Because you win.
of course.
I mean,
When you
what?
play a 10-10 trampler, I mean, what could get in your way?
Yeah, I mean, why do you want this little mana rock that just taps for extra mana when I can just buy islands for cheaper? So anyway, yeah. So I was just a kid playing on the asphalt back in the day. Uh, Started really seriously playing when I got into college. That was during the Innistrad. I'm sorry, not the Innistrad. During the Lorwyn Time Spiral Ravnica 1. Then been playing pretty competitively ever since. Started Modern about the time Modern during Modern's inception, when it was, I think it was extended before, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah, they had extended, and then kind of the progenitor to modern was what they, I think it was called overextended, and that was kind of like the early framework before modern was modern, and then modern came out when they did enough testing, I guess.
Yeah, about the time that Modern became a real thing is when I gave up on Standard. I just was tired of wasting money on rotating formats, and Legacy was too expensive, so Modern was a perfect middle ground for me. And been playing fairly competitively ever since.
It is really interesting to have you on to have your depth of perspective with both modern and I know we both play legacy as well, but having somebody around that can talk about the decks that we're playing against and just the experience from playing competitive Magic, it'll be really good to have you around.
Oh, absolutely. Done a few GPs, did okay in some, not so well in others. Mostly a Friday Night Magic guy. So, but the scene down here in San Antonio is pretty competitive. So you see some really good players. So yeah, I've seen pretty much every deck there is that you can see, from the janky homebrews to the tier ones.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm glad to have your expertise here. I haven't played as long as you have. I started in Ravnica 2, the Electric Boogaloo. Uh, but I mean, I played Standard and then I played some Commander. And I actually didn't start playing Modern until I came to the store that you were at, uh, and basically I built Boros, Burn, Prowess, Tempo, something Blood Moon deck, and
Mm-hmm.
I did really good 1 week, and then after that, people figured out what I was doing, and that was it. Uh, it, it was a okay first attempt at a modern deck, and actually, I did have one deck before that. It was the Blister Coil
Storm.
Weird combo
You oh
deck.
yeah, you were playing Storm there for a while, weren't you?
It was a very bad version of Storm. It played Jataxin Probe and Paradise Mantle, and the Blister Coil Weird is the guy that you can, whenever you cast an instant, he untaps, and so you put the Paradise Mantle on Blister Coil Weird, he untaps, and then he gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and so you would just cast Manamorphose and stuff like that, and it was just a bad Storm deck.
But you know what? Kind of what you were saying before is kind of why Modern is such a great format. Is you can have these janky homebrews come in and actually do well. The only issue you're going to run into is that you can't do it consistently. Kind of like how you did. You came in, you shook up the format, but then people figured you out and you couldn't repeat. And that's why you have your tier decks like your Fish, like your Tron, like your Twin, RIP, that show up weekly, and people are always going to have a little bit of trouble with them. Why? And that's why they continue to place.
But yeah, and I mean, there's something to coming up with your own little spicy uh, you know lab maniac sort of deck, right? And it's really cool when you can come and just like knock a few people down and first or second your F and M. But I mean when it comes down to it, decks like Tron, decks like Affinity, decks like Death Shadow right now is pretty big. Fish. Uh, so they just have really good power, and that's all it takes sometimes is just to have consistency, to be strong on such a consistent level, and that's why you see good players that play Tron, that play Fish, that play Burn, that can you see those lists in top eights all the time.
There's a reason why you see the same decks and the same names quite often, especially in big time events.
So we're going to go ahead and go into our first of many recurring segments, and we'll just roll into it right now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the random Merfolk card! I really hope this annoys the hell out of somebody. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to look on Gatherer and pick out of the 182 Merfolk cards, and we're going to pick a random one and talk about its potential applicability in any format in a manner that is chosen beforehand and completely arbitrary. The first time I asked my wife to pick a number between 1 and 182, she picked 25, and that is Triton Shorestalker. It's a blue, it's a 1/1, a Merfolk Rogue, and it says Triton Shorestalker can't be blocked. That's it.
It is a Merfolk, a Pearl Triton on steroids.
Absolutely not.
No, so it's kind of interesting. This card actually, and I know we've talked about it a little bit off air. I think this card actually could see some potential popper play as a invisible stalker light, or maybe like if you want to have an extra invisible stalker in there, you put an equipment on him, a little battle axe, and just have him go in there and start bashing face. I mean, not having hexproof is a pretty big downfall, but this is also a random Merfolk from Journey to Nyx, so we're gonna do what we can with them.
Yeah, and I mean, for those of you at home that don't have it pulled up, Invisible Stalkers 1 in a blue for a 1/1 with hexproof, and it also says Invisible Stalker is unblockable. So I mean, this is kind of like Invisible Stalker. It's the artist formerly known as Invisible Stalker, and unfortunately, in Pauper they have Bolt.
It's Invisible Stalker's younger, more unsuccessful brother.
Yeah, it's definitely the Invisible Stalker that didn't get there, and I mean even in Pauper, like there's Bolt, there's Doomblade, the removal is the spell bombs. There's too much going on in Pauper to make this effective, and it would actually be really cool to do to mess around with a Pauper Merfolk list, but I think it would take at least one Lord to get there, one common Lord.
Yeah, again, I mean, because we'll call a spade here. This card is completely unplayable in Legacy.
Oh, definitely.
It's completely unplayable in Modern. So we're talking about some of the more fringe formats. EDH, it's probably still unplayable unless you have a very budgeted tribal Merfolk deck that you're trying to play.
Yeah.
The one thing though where I could see it actually maybe being somewhat of an all-star would be Journey to Nyx Limited Sealed.
Yeah, maybe if you were just doing triple Journey into Nyx, or maybe like like Theros block draft. I don't even remember it being that good in
Yeah,
that.
and that was one of the things. It's been so long since I've drafted Theros. I know they had like Bestow, so I can imagine him maybe getting a few enchantments on him, then going in there and beating face. But yeah, I don't remember him being good either. So I'm assuming there was other things we were going after at the time.
Well, I mean, even in the blue white, the blue white Bestow decks that were pretty popular in triple Theros, it kind of fell off in Journey into Nyx, if I remember correctly. Theros was kind of the first draft format that I ever really put time into, and so I remember that uh, Born of the Gods kind of made white blue not as good. And then with Journey into Nyx, there wasn't a lot of bestow in Journey into Nyx, so it was kind of harder to get that deck together. I'm not saying you couldn't,
Mhm.
but it just
Sure.
wasn't there.
Yeah, and one thing to remember too, that was during the time when we had the 3 block set. And by the time Journey to Nyx came out, it was a very underwhelming set, so there wasn't much hype behind it. And with the 3 blocks, by the time the third set came out, there's a lot of fatigue for that playing. People were ready to leave Theros by that point.
Yeah, and now we see that they're even going to just a one set block, and I don't even know what we'd call that. But that discussion is for a different time.
Sure.
So we're gonna. So I didn't actually touch on it in the little intro that we did, but one of the main reasons why I'm moving into Merfolk, uh, I guess my reasons are threefold. Number one is to have a deck that is tiered. I mean, it's Merfolk is not like the top of tier one right now.
It's a solid B minus.
Yeah, it's like a B, B minus, B plus, depending on the day. But Merfolk is
But
definitely
but it's always going to be a B minus. That's the thing. Some decks go from A plus to an F. Merfolk is constantly, it's pretty good.
yeah. It always shows up. It always does pretty good. It may not win any major prizes or anything like that, but generally every once in a while Merfolk just spikes a GP, and top eights and does pretty darn good. And there's lots of new cool stuff coming out in these upcoming sets, which I'm going to talk. Which is my second reason is with the most recent reprints, a lot of the parts have become affordable. I mean, we
If
had
you're not trying to foil it out.
well, that's another matter altogether. Um, but I mean, Aether Vial just got reprinted, which was an expensive part of the deck. Um, Cavern of Souls got reprinted a little bit ago, but that's already rebounded to where it
Yeah.
was. And I mean, we're getting Silvergill reprinted. We're getting Mutavault reprinted. So it's kind of one of those things that it's kind of coming together. And we've got core sets coming back. We have another set with Merfolk, so we might get something else in there and Rivals. And
Well,
then
again, I know you're playing mostly the standard traditional blue mono blue Merfolk, but right now a
yes,
lot of people are going to Simic Merfolk, which is very interesting.
yeah, a lot of people are going into Simic Merfolk. I'm sure we'll have a discussion at some point about the pros and cons of both. But I just kind of wanted to run over the deck that I have here. It's pretty standard, I think. I do have one kind of different take on it. So the creatures are pretty standard. 4 Curse Catcher is the 1 drop that you can pay. You can sacrifice it to 4 spike. Uh, 4 Lord of Atlantis. 4 Master of the Pearl Trident. The lords that give Island Walk. Then we have Harbinger of the Tides as a 4 of that taps a creature, or sorry, returns a tapped creature to their hand. Um, 4 Silvergill Adept, which is getting reprinted in Rivals. That is
Amazing
a
new art.
with great new art. I think the full art promo, the game day promo is pretty sick.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But that's the 2 mana one that when it enters you or when you cast it, you have to reveal a Merfolk or pay 3, and you get to draw a card. So that's pretty good. Um, 4 Marrow Reejery, which is a 3 mana lord, but whenever you cast a Merfolk, you can tap or untap a creature. So some play with Harbinger of the Tides there. And 4 Master of Waves, which is also pretty standard. Makes a whole bunch of 1/0 elementals, but then buffs them to be 2/1s. So when you have lots of devotion with like the Master of the Pearl Tridents and all that, that's it's pretty good. Um, Kira Great Glass Spinner. It's not a Merfolk, but kind of has been standard in Merfolk lists for a long time. I guess the honorary Merfolk. And the flex spot that I have for a creature is 1 Spellskite. And I think it's just good enough because you can pay the Phyrexian mana to redirect a removal. It's kind of like a soft counter.
If I remember correctly, you don't even have to pay the Phyrexian mana if you don't want to. It's the blue Phyrexian, correct?
Yes, it's a blue Phyrexian, so if you have the mana up, you can just pay for it. But worst comes to worst, if you're tapped out, you have protection from removal. So that's definitely pretty good. It has 4 toughness, so it outlasts bolts. A lot of the damage based removal, really, and that's pretty darn good.
And see, and I have no problem with that card right now, especially with so much Fatal Push run around out there.
Yeah, you can just redirect a Fatal Push, and I'd rather it take out my Spellskite rather than Master of the Pearl Trident or something like that.
Exactly. Now, I know one card that we've kind of talked about is I think it was what Talarian says that they're not a big fan of the Curse Catchers anymore. Am I correct on that?
Yeah,
So a lot of people are kind of split on that. I know I'm a big fan of that. I feel like Curse Catcher is almost like a Thalia for that. It can put a lot of decks a turn behind, having to hold up for that 1 mana.
yeah, definitely, and that's kind of the reason why I'm keeping him in there. I'm sure that there's metas where Curse Catcher's not good, and there's obviously decks where Curse Catcher's not good, like Tron, or I could see it not being very good in Storm. Just decks that generate lots of mana, just kind of not being super great there.
Sure, but that's why you have a sideboard.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll
And,
talk
and
about
he
that.
and he's still a fish. He
Yeah,
can still swim right across the board and beat face.
yeah, and with Lords in play, it can be a 2/2 or a 3/3, and once you get some Island Walk going, then swinging in with a 3/3 is pretty darn good.
Absolutely. Now, one card that I know we have gone back and forth on is the Elemental Lord, the Master of Waves. I'm not a big fan,
Yeah,
and I know you're, and I see you're playing a playset.
yeah. Master of Waves has kind of stuck around in mono blue at least. Partially, just having all those 2/1s, they're great blockers. So I mean, if you're playing against Tron or something like that, they have big creatures, but that's pretty much it. They're big creatures, and so you can just like throw those 2/1s underneath, which is pretty good. Just
Well, you can throw your 2/1s underneath there until the Master Wave goes away, and they become 0/1 creatures and all die.
well, yeah, and Master of Wave has protection from red, which is good for a lot of damage based removal, and it forces them to trigger Revolt to for Fatal Push, and that it's fine because then if they waste the removal, then they're not wasting the removal on a Lord.
Sure, and I understand that, but I feel like it's a win more card when there's other slots you could add or other things that could potentially be better in there. I'm a big fan of adding Phantasmal Image personally, or potentially put a Sig in there. I know he's kind of like an old school way to go. Um, but it just for me every time I see a fish player because usually they're tapping out to play that. All I know is okay. One, I really don't care, and two, you're tapping out, so you're not gonna be able to counter me next turn. So I'm gonna have a
Yeah.
free.
Well, I mean, especially as we're gonna get into the spells here, if you have a second Aether Vial, you can just let one tick up, to let it tick up to 4, and
This is modern. We don't get to turn 4 very
we
often.
we do get to turn 4. There's turn 4 games. So
Actually, I think I've been watching too much Legacy.
well, speaking of Aether Vial, 4 of Aether Vial, because I mean, it's a staple in the deck. Just you know, having it at 1 means you can flash in a Curse Catcher.
It's a staple of Magic the Gathering. In all fairness, it's good in almost any format you can play it in.
Yeah, but Aether Vial has kind of found its home in Modern in Merfolk. So
Sure.
so that's kind of, I mean, it's a bad late game draw, but
Mhm.
pretty much any time before that, it's usually okay. And honestly, holding it, for the 8 rack decks that play what's that discard spell that makes you discard 2 unless you discard an artifact? That 8 rack
Mind
plays.
Wrench?
Yeah, Mind Wrench. So it's insurance against Mind Wrench. You can keep it in your hand to discard late game against Lily of the Veil and stuff like that. So I mean, it's not dead late game, but it is kind of a bad late game draw.
No, it's a great card.
So then next is 4 Spreading Seas. You know, mana bases right now are super greedy. From 5-color humans to Jeskai is a big deck right now at GP
Tron is the
Oklahoma.
big one.
Yeah, Tron.
Is super greedy. What are some of the other ones? Affinity is super greedy.
Yep, Naya Burn. There's lots. I mean, like
Eldrazi usually
El-
doesn't have much non colorless mana.
yeah, that's yeah, and this just points out that all these tiered decks, Grixis Death Shadow, all these tiered decks that have, 3+ colors, or even in the case of Tron and Affinity, those decks need their lands for specific things. They have creature lands. They have, with Tron, it turns off Tron for you to nail one of their lands.
Mm-hmm.
That's just dumb. It shuts them down.
This card is straight up bread and butter. It just is. Especially as you said, Modern is an insanely greedy format right now. For some reason, Blood Moon is just not being played, so people are just running rampant and not fetching basics. They're fetching just shocks, um, and it really can shut people down really quickly.
Which I actually think it's a shame that people aren't playing Blood Moon as much as they should be. I think red decks would do themselves a great favor by playing Blood Moon a lot more.
If I can get my hands on two more ensnaring bridges, I'm going to be playing Free Win Red here, just because I'm going to be the Blood Moon guy and just win.
Yeah. No, I mean that's fair. And then I'm running 2 Dismember. Some people run Dismember, some people run Vapor Snag. But basically they're both just to get things out of the way, remove creatures, and it just kind of depends on what you're up against. If you're up against Tron, you take out Dismember. If you're
Valakut, you're going to take it out as well.
Yeah, you're gonna take, so it's sideboard, it's game dependent, but Dismember is pretty good against a majority of the field, so it's pretty good. Shrinks down Death Shadows so you can block them, all sorts of stuff.
No, I mean, Dismember is just great.
Yeah. So
I mean, the 4 life can be, it's just worth it.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah. So for lands, we're gonna play 2 Cavernous Souls. Counter spell decks really aren't super relevant right now, and I know with Jeskai coming back, that's a little bit of a thing. But really, there aren't a lot of counterspell decks right now in Modern.
I mean, realistically, when it comes to countering Modern, we're talking Cryptic Command, and so that's by turn 4. By turn 4, you've already gone off.
Yeah.
You've already shot your load all over the place by that point. So
yeah,
Cryptic's not going to be an issue for you.
Yeah, definitely, and so I think running two caverns is all right. Then 4 of Mutavaults, because they become Merfolk when you activate them, but they also become Elementals for Master of Waves to pump.
You're trying to force me on that Master Waves. I don't agree.
Well, after I get some more testing in, and I log some results, we'll discuss it. Then 2 other mono blue lands that come into play untapped and tap for blue are Minamo, School at Water's Edge, and Oboro, Palace in the Clouds. These are kind of to hedge against boil effects, and boil effects kind of come and go depending on how good Fish is doing, basically. So if Fish is doing really good, you're going to see lots of boil come out of the sideboard.
Yeah, I mean, I play Grixis Control pretty regularly as one of my pet decks, and I will always have 1 boil in the sideboard.
Yep, boil, choke, the like. And then I'm also running 1 Wonderwine Hub. It's a land that taps for white or blue and comes into play untapped if you reveal a Merfolk. It's just another boil land protection. And then 11 islands to make 20 lands. So that's pretty common among Merfolk players right now.
Well, hold on a second. Don't just go over that quickly. First of all, the basic island is the greatest Magic card ever printed.
Yes.
The most powerful. There's no debate on that. It's basic island and Black Lotus.
Yes.
1/2. So, but
I have 11 of the most powerful card in Magic, is what you're saying, in my deck.
Exactly. Well, you're playing 11 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But I did want to talk about the other 3 lands though. What is so Mononimo?
Yeah. Mononimo. Yeah.
So that is it's legendary land from Kamigawa. it taps and return target legend to
No, it's
owner's hand,
blue, tap,
or
untap, target legendary permanent.
target legend. Okay, so what you're using this for is as kind of a fog effect for legendary this creature that's attacking you, because you're not running any legends in your deck, except for Akira,
Yeah, Kira. And
and you're not
honestly,
blocking with Akira.
well, also it untaps Oboro,
Okay, fair.
and Oboro can bounce itself or can bounce another land. So you could feasibly tap Minamo to untap Oboro, to tap Oboro to return Oboro back to your hand and then replay it. And in certain cases, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. It's just fancy play syndrome. Um, and basically, they're just so you have non basics that come into play untapped,
And tap for blue.
and then tap for blue. That's it,
Okay,
really. There's
fair,
nothing.
because Oboro is actually a fairly pricey card now.
Yeah.
And every time I see it in a deck list, it's always in the fish deck list. I'm like, I mean, it's there, it's fine. I understand. I mean, it taps for blue and it doesn't get boiled, but
Well, so
it's
the other main thing is because we have Mutavault and Cavern of Souls that don't naturally tap for blue. You can tap Oboro. Um, you can tap Oboro for blue. Tap a Mutavault to return Oboro back to your hand, and then replay it, and then tap it again for blue. So for Lords, if you just need the extra blue for another creature, it's kind of a way to generate more blue mana if you just can't draw the islands for some reason. And there are games that happens in.
but
But
it's not moving the needle that much. Like let's say I want to play fish. I have the rest of the deck, but that I'm not out of the deck by not playing that
no,
card.
no, you could definitely just run islands. That's
Okay.
not. And I mean, we have that new Uncharted territory, the
Mhm.
new creature land. So you could even run that instead of Cavern of Souls and have a serviceable. I think the Mutavaults you kind of need, but you
No,
could
the
do
mutables are 100%. Yeah.
you so like for a budget mana base you could do like four of the Uncharted territory, four Mutavaults, and then 14 islands. No, it would be 12 islands. So you could just do that, and that's a good
So
budget land base.
what one thing I do like about your Brandywine hub, because that is just the weirdest thing I've ever seen in a fish list. But if you're not just playing this at FNM, if you're gonna do this at like with a lot of random people or gonna be on a moto or things like that, when you drop that on somebody in your fish build, it is gonna confuse the hell out of people,
That's true.
which is gonna be amazing. Like they're gonna be wondering if you're playing Sig, Fatal or not Fatal Push, Path to Exile. I don't know, maybe he's playing Holy Day, and there's no way.
Yeah, it's a clever ruse, if you will. So then in the sideboard, real quick, three ceremonious rejection. Um, it's good against Tron. It's good against
Lantern.
Affinity Lantern. So ceremonious rejection is really powerful in the sideboard. Um, two dispel, four relic of progenitus, two echoing truth, two negate, and two gut shot.
Okay,
And
I mean I think that's all
pretty
pretty
standard
cut and
stuff.
dry. Yeah, I
So
mean it's strong. I mean you can make the argument against all the major decks in modern how that's going to work out for, and then the negates and the dispels are just I mean they're just good utility against even some of the janky stuff you might run into.
yeah, so just like I said, you try to play against have outs against the bigger decks, and because I mean, to be honest, like Lantern is kind of a slog, no matter what deck you have. So basically, you need to have every tool that you can to stop them from sticking what they need to. It also, um, it helps against Tron with geez, I'm forgetting the name of that worm. The life.
The coily worm.
Yeah, worm coil. Yeah, that one. The coily worm. And just dispel relic of progenitus. There's still lots of graveyard decks. I mean, Tassiger. Um,
Oh, I mean,
for
let's be
Magangler.
honest. The oh crap, the cycle and then bring everything back from the graveyard. What's the black card from Time Spiral?
Oh man, I don't know.
Oh God,
It's
are we
it's
really
left
gonna
me
do
now.
this?
Yeah, we're both gonna space.
We're gonna space.
Um, oh, Logic Knot.
No.
Yeah, well, that's the delve counterspell. I'm
Yeah,
not. Yeah, that's
but
definitely not
anyway, I
helping.
mean, with the new As Foretold version of that, people are cycling a lot right now, and
Yeah,
with all the new cycle
Living End.
living in. Thank
Living
you,
End is it? Yeah.
thank you,
When you
thank
said
you.
as foretold, it came to me.
Yeah, but the new As Foretold Living End is very popular and very powerful actually, and with
Yeah.
all the new cyclers out of Amonkhet, Almond
Hmm.
Cat, it's just yeah, the graveyards are back. Dredge is still dredging up every once in a while. So you got to be prepared for that. And I mean, realistically, you Goyce are around still, and you got to keep them tiny.
Yeah. I mean,
I
Goyf.
mean, and then snappies. You make sure Snapcaster doesn't have something to target.
Yeah, Snappy. You got to keep Snappy in check. That's
I
that
mean,
and the storm for casting
I
flames.
run relics in almost every deck I have, either relics or now spell bombs. You need to have something to interact with the graveyards,
I totally agree.
and the card draw is amazing.
All right, so the last thing I wanted to discuss was Gemstone Caverns. Now, Nikachu on YouTube has been playing this in his mono blue lists. It is a legendary land, Gemstone Caverns. If Gemstone Caverns is in your opening hand and you're not playing first, you may begin the game with Gemstone Caverns in play with a luck counter on it. If you do, remove a card in your hand from the game, tap, add one generic to your mana pool. If Gemstone Caverns has a luck counter on it, instead add one mana of any color to your mana pool. Now, I wanted to hear your ideas on this being in the list. I mean, it's only good half the time, really. It's only good when you're on the draw, but it kind of shores up that loss from being on the draw. And it's a legendary land, so you're not playing multiples of this, right?
No, I actually love it. I'm surprised more people aren't doing it. And in other decks as well. I believe the Sun and Moon decks play it
Yeah,
to try to ramp a little bit. Um, it's I mean you get a Lord turn one
yeah. No, I mean, that's definitely powerful. Uh,
or a Silver Guild turn one. It's just and realistically in a fish deck you're not going to be with 11 of the greatest cards that's ever been printed in the deck. It's not like you're really going to be hurting for getting for or punished for playing the generic mana if you don't have the luck counter on it. So it moves the needle just enough to make it worth it.
and you can use that generic mana to pay for the generic mana in Dismember. You can use it to pay for generic mana to activate a Mutavault, so you can keep up your islands.
Hmm.
I think there are plenty of areas where, and there's definitely an argument for running a Gemstone Caverns. I just don't know if I'm sold on it yet. I'll definitely have to load it up and test it.
I mean, it's definitely a win more card, kind of like the other ones we were talking about, or Boro
Yeah.
and Mamamo. Um, ba 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 ba. But
Oh no no no.
but it's one of those things. If you have the budget for it, then it doesn't hurt. It's not going to like make your deck any worse. If anything, it's just going to make it slightly better. So I see no problem with it.
Yeah, it's definitely like you said. Just to echo what you said, it's it's definitely win more. And I mean, do you think this is better on the play or on the draw? I think it's better on the draw.
Well, it has to be on the draw if I remember correctly. Otherwise, you can't put the luck counter on it.
Well, I mean, it says if you're not playing first. So if
Yes, you
you
have to be on the draw to be able to do.
oh okay yeah, never mind. I for some reason I was thinking like if you had lost game two and you had this in your hand in your opener. I mean, that's definitely good. But like you said, so it's only good. It's only usable when you're
I
on the
thought
draw.
I thought you were throwing a trick question at me.
Well, I was
See my
tricking
knowledge of the
myself.
card.
It was a trick question, but it was only for myself. Um, and so it's only really colored mana half the time. it's colored mana when you start behind, but it does.
No,
It's
it's
kind of
not even
like
colored mana half the time. It's colored mana like 2% of the time
yeah,
because it has to have that luck counter on it.
but so it's kind of like in Hearthstone when you start with the coin when you're on the draw, and you start with that extra coin that gives you 1 mana 1 time. So you can use it at any time, but it kind of helps offset the fact that you had to start second.
I'm married with a toddler. I'm only allowed to have one nerdy hobby. So I have no idea what you just said, but okay, whatever.
I also play Murlocs in Hearthstone, so I'm sure at some point it will be discussed on an episode. But I think that is a good place to end this. We kind of went over basics of fish, and discuss some kind of out there lands. They're kind of cool, and it'll be fun to test them and see how they do. Do you have anything you
It's a
want to?
fun deck. It's an affordable deck. It's a deck that can be played modern and with very slight tweaks can be played in legacy. It's one of those decks that anybody can pick up and play, but not everybody can potentially master because there is a lot of interaction going on. So it's a wide variety of people who can play it. And as you said, it's kind of a Swiss Army knife. There's a lot of things you can take out and put in, things like that. Whereas in a lot of decks, you have to play the stock list or you're playing it wrong.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, in a deck like I mean your namesake deck in Modern is Tron,
Hmm.
and so you play pretty much every version of Tron there is.
Yeah,
But
I've
name
I've played them all.
a Tron player that has tried to put in a Gemstone Caverns in their Tron deck.
I wouldn't recommend it. It sounds like a bad
No,
idea.
no, and just so like in Tron
No,
list
but
there are
you're right. I mean,
cards.
realistically, the mana base in Tron is going to be exactly the same, unless you can't afford some of the more expensive cards like the Grove of the Burn Willows or
Yeah,
etc. So I mean, yeah, the mana bases are going to be fairly similar.
yeah. Well, and you know that like sometimes the power is just consistency, is you know what you're
Mhm.
getting every time, so that's
Absolutely.
not bad. But I do like the idea of having a deck that I can kind of mess around with a little bit here and there. Test like I have a playset of Water Trap Weavers that I've seen some people playing. Nikachu played it, and I've got my eye on it. That's one of those ones that
Well, and that's the neat thing about a tribal deck like this is like unlike Tron or Lantern or even Affinity, um, there are a lot of different plug and play. Like we just said, I mean, some people don't like Curse Catchers. Some people, like myself, don't like Master Waves. Some people don't want to play Kira. They want to play the new one from Ixalan, I think, is
yeah,
the new Merfolk Kira. So I mean, there's a lot of plug and play. I mean, some people play sets of certain things. Some people only want to play two of certain things. I mean, the only real consistency is you're gonna be playing 12 lords.
yeah.
I mean, you got to play your Master of the Pearl Trident. You got to play your Lord of Atlantis. You got to play your Mara Retreats. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah, no, those are all always there. And the card, the legendary creature that you're talking about from Ixalan, Kopala, Warden of Waves, 1 blue for a 2/2 legendary Merfolk wizard. Spells your opponents cast that target a Merfolk you control cost 2 more to cast, and abilities your opponents activate that target a Merfolk you control cost 2 more to activate.
So he's a Kiro Light, but he's a Merfolk, so he'll get pumped up and he can swim with Island Walk.
That's correct.
So we'll probably talk about it eventually, but I know there's been a big split between him and Kira, and I think the jury is still out on that one as well.
And while the jury may still be out on that decision, we're about to end this show. So if you feel like you want to reach out and talk to us, you can talk to us on our official Twitter at FishcastMTG. My personal Twitter is not Kody Smith, is at NOTKODYSMITH. And Matt, your Twitter?
It is Matthew Caudill 8, which is one of those things where I don't think I'm supposed to give out my last name, but well, say Levy.
So if you want to reach us for any questions about Modern, Legacy, Commander, hit us up on the on either the Fishcast MTG Twitter or our personal accounts, and I'm sure we'll be able to answer those questions. And special thanks goes out to Hunter and Tessa Pruitt for our fantastic cover art. Thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you next week.